All right, and joining me today is Matt from Printable Scenery. How you doing, Matt?
Hey, good, thanks.
So, Matt, real quick, before we jump into your awesome new Kickstarter, I have to ask you, are you a comic book fan at all?
Comic book fan. Yes, well, I mean, I haven't read comics for quite a long time. I mean, I used to read 2000 AD was one of my big, I had the very first edition when I was probably about 12 years old with a little flyer. And I collected 2000 AD for a long time. So
Yeah.
the scope of my comic collections was pretty much locked into 2000 AD, Judge Dredd. Yeah, so...
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's our duty as a comic book podcast to ask because, and it's because I know that you're obviously very much into gaming, and we have a lot of crossover with a lot of comic book fans are very much into gaming, and so just we have to double check before we get talking about your awesome stuff. So, for anyone,
Just to make sure.
yeah, well, we just have to know where your pedigree is, right? So, as the listeners of our show will know that I love to game, and I've been playing D&D since 1982, and a big part of playing D&D is your miniatures and your tabletop, and most of us spend most of our time playing games with cardboard cutouts or maybe a whiteboard with a dry erase marker, and it doesn't get much more sophisticated than that. And there is scenery available, but a lot of it's expensive, and most of us don't spend our gaming funds on scenery, unfortunately. But now, with the advent of 3D printing, it's making it super affordable, and some of the stuff is absolutely gorgeous. And I myself have printed out some of your products, and I'm ecstatic with how amazing all the detail is and everything. And so I'm really excited to tell our audience about your current Kickstarter for Rampage Castle and Time Warp, and all the new stuff that they can get for their 3D printer. So you want to tell us a little bit about what you got going on right now?
Yeah, well, the Kickstarter basically comes in three kind of main pledges. It comes in a Europe pledge, which is has some medieval buildings, a church, and kind of mid-century European buildings. And then we have the Americas group, which is basically some kind of Wild West buildings and some piratey kind of Caribbean kind of stuff going on as well. We listened to a lot of our backers from our previous campaigns, and we were trying to figure out what they wanted when it came to new buildings. And so what we did was we basically tried to group those buildings into different categories. And then we also have the category which is Rampage System, which is this kind of dungeon tile system that you can build castles with, you could call it, and it's an expansion on our Rampage dungeons.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm the most excited about, because I have your Rampage system, and I've printed out a bunch of your tiles. In fact, for Christmas, my gift to my girls, I have two daughters, aged 10 and 8, and I DM'd their very first D&D campaign. And I printed out a bunch of your dungeon tiles and locked them all together and made a really cool dungeon layout for their first ever dungeon delve, and they loved it. So it was fantastic. And now I'm excited because every gaming table, whether it's like a Warhammer tabletop game or whether it's D&D, you got to have a castle, right, Matt?
Yeah. Well, you can have a castle that has a dungeon inside it or under it, and the parts that you've printed for your dungeon's Rampage system already will work with the castle. For example, we've got Bruce there who's playing with all of the stuff. I'll just grab give me some. Can I grab a traps and stuff? Okay. Got some bombs. Yeah, I was just going to say. So it is. Sorry, guys.
No worries at all.
For example, you got your trap wall. You can have your trap walls like inside castles and stuff. You can use the A wall from Rampage and mix it with the A wall from Rampage Castle. That's a wooden wall from Rampage Castle.
That's super cool.
Rampage Castle has the addition of having little side locks. So with a Rampage Dungeon, what you did is you have an A wall, then you have a slightly longer wall called a C wall, Then you have a longer wall, which is a D wall. This, what this does here is you just simply click your side locking piece into the. Oops, hang on, haven't cleaned that one out yet.
Oh, yeah, when you for those watching at home, when you print them out, there's a little spacer in between that you have to like clip out because it helps support it while it's printing, and so it takes like 2 seconds to clip it out, and then you're ready to go.
So you take your standard A wall, then you clip in your side part, then you have your wall, and then you keep just clipping in. If I get the other clips out. So we've just been messing with clips and prototypes.
Oh, I know, it's been a really busy week for you.
Kind of thing there. So you make a D wall, an A wall, and a C wall. C wall. So that gives you your basic. Then you're able to tessellate around any type of object, you know.
Right.
And connect everything. Basically, everything kind of connects together to form the Rampage interior. Or you could use this to map out a dungeon.
Right. That's super cool. I'm sort of envisioning, a really nice castle on top. Maybe that's built onto some styrofoam that has a staircase going down into a dungeon underneath, and then you could lift the castle off or something like that, and it would just be beautiful.
Yeah,
that's what I want to do. I want to slowly keep printing parts for the castle and just expand it, and hopefully by the time your next Kickstarter rolls around, there'll be even more castle parts, so I can make it even more unique. That's what I'm really looking forward to. Is I'm kind of a castle nerd. Every time I've been to Europe, I go to at least 2 or 3 castles every time, right? And so the one thing about castles is every single one of them is different because they're typically built on top of some rocky foundation or something, and they sort of take the shape of whatever rocks they happen to be on top of, right? So there's all kinds of crazy corners and weird angles and stuff. So my personal, selfish goal, right, hope is that in the future, as your system expands, we'll get more of those interesting shapes to keep making each new castle different from the last,
Yeah. Well, you can actually make quite a complex shape castle with this system. We're just setting up now to make a couple of new examples on the table there. We're going to photograph them and put them up on the Kickstarter. But you can make quite complex shapes. You can make you can make some really weird stuff actually. And when we incorporate all of the hex walls and the hexagonal pieces, which are all part of the Kickstarter, that's going to be really, really interesting to see how all that kind of turns out.
I didn't realize that there were hex pieces in the Kickstarter. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, then we can
hex
really
pieces.
go nuts.
Yeah. I might have some. I don't have any printed out here, but we do have them. You see them up on the page there.
Awesome. And you have a really, really cool cathedral that is part of the World War II Europe side of things, which would also be great for any sort of fantasy setting as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, I'll grab it over without knocking it over. So this is it here, and it's kind of modular from the perspective that you can swap out the back piece with the non-ruined piece. So in a war game scenario, as opposed to a role-playing game scenario, you can kind of swap a broken area out for a intact area. But because it's medieval, you can use this in a fantasy setting as well. It's not fantasy though, so it's like historical medieval, whereas, if you look at Rampage system, it's kind of got that fantasy kind of look, where all you've got chunky kind of beams and it looks a little bit slightly that fantasy movie kind of element, Lord of the Rings or whatever. This comes apart into different pieces, so you can change the spire. And also someone suggested, which is a really good idea, is we're going to make an alternate version with a Norman top, because the castles in France, which in south of France are mainly Norman castles, and South England, where then they have a little garrison on the top there with a little crenellation type top.
Yeah, that'd be great for something like bolt action or something like that, where you could I love how you can take the top off real easy, so you could sit your sniper in there and then put the top back on, so it looks great while you're playing, but you know that your sniper's inside or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So,
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, they don't know. They think 3D printing is inaccessible. They think it's this thing of the future and it must cost a fortune. But what they don't know is that it doesn't have to cost a fortune at all. So I bought the Monoprice Select Mini Printer, which I've printed all my stuff on. It's $200. That's it. At least in the United States. I don't know if it's a little more expensive elsewhere or not, but in the States it's $200, and plastic is $20 a reel, and I print a whole lot of dungeon parts for $20.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, when I remember looking, we were playing D&D, and then a lot of like Dwarven Forge come out with their beautiful scenery, and seeing all that, and seeing the Kickstarters, and seeing everyone playing on that, it was really good. But it was just, I guess I couldn't really either afford or justify that large expense, because just to have one room wasn't enough. I'd want a table full,
Exactly.
So when the 3D printing started, I think, and Devin Jones, he made some free scenery which you can get on Thingiverse called OpenForge, and he was the first one to kind of. And at the same time, we were building some tiles as well, and I was talking to him. So it's probably about nearly 3 or 4 years ago, and that's when it kind of dawned on people that, hey, and I started printing out all of Devin's tiles, all OpenForge, and I was building it up. And then we moved into sort of doing more and more scenery. Now Devin's actually doing the open lock system as well, so you can use all of the OpenForge tiles with our tiles. There's also a lot of other people coming on board with open lock, so you can go and download. Someone can make a whole floor section, a new type of floor, and you can get that floor, or someone can make just a wall and put a head on it or something like that, and that'll just slot into your dungeon or your castle or whatever you want.
Yeah, so that's I don't know, what was it about? It was about a year or two ago that you created the open lock system?
Yeah, it was like last year we kind of, the open lock came about with, we were looking at making a connection system for scenery, and traditionally everybody has been following on from the Dwarven Forge system, which is where you have your 4-inch tile, 2-inch by 2-inch tile, and the wall sits on the tile, and you can assemble them into different configurations. And I think with resin, that's the only way to do it if you're using resin, because it doesn't have the strength of PLA or ABS type of plastic. You can't really make a tight clipping system.
Right.
So the what happened basically, I think, was the people who invented tiles after that basically copied along from the Dwarven Forge system, saying that works, so let's do that and have that. But when we looked at changing or making a whole new interlocking system, we really wanted something that was going to work for all scenery, that just wasn't just dungeons. So that was one point. The other point was we wanted something that would hold together, and you didn't have to lift it up off the table to connect it,
right?
And it would fall out or anything like that. We wanted to be able to be, to have that down on the table and go clonk and put a wall, into it. We wanted to be able to pick it up into rooms, so you could assemble an entire room. And I've got a video there. You can see you can make a room, throw the room down. When the players go into that new room, you can get the new room, and I put all the monsters in it and little notes, so because I forget, being old. And you've got all your stuff, and they go into that new place on the map, and they look at it, and you put it on the table, and they're like, wow, and then you play the next one, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did for my girls for Christmas. I had like 3 different rooms, and I had them all prepped and hidden, away. And as they went into the dungeon, I got the first room out, and that blew their mind. And then there was a secret door, and then I snapped on the next chamber, and it was just. And then when it was done, and you're looking at that whole dungeon layout on the table, Matt, I'm telling you, like, compared to how we used to play games when we were kids, and all we had was a piece of paper, this is just a whole nother level. It really. It's very visceral, and it just adds that whole extra thing to D&D that just makes it so much more fun to play for me, right? I know D&D is all about our imagination, right? But at some point, seeing something for real on the table helps our imagination, I think, just take everything to the next level. And it's just so much, it was so much fun. And So props to you guys and to everyone. I really started with the Dwarven Forge guy, and then to take it all the next level. And your whole Open Forge thing, I really have to thank you, because now there's just an explosion of stuff, and now we don't have to try to decide which system should I buy into, right? It's not like buying an Xbox or a PlayStation. Once I get one, I don't want to buy the other one because it's too expensive. Well, now I can just get everything and put it all together and just create so much amazing stuff. And I'm just thrilled with how much fun I've had with this 3D printing thing, how much is added to my gaming experience. And personally, my favorite system is your system. I think the aesthetic of the buildings that you make and of the tiles that you make is top notch. I think I prefer it over some of the other stuff that I've played around with. And I'm super excited that each Kickstarter you have has gotten more successful, because I want you to stick around and I want you to keep making more parts. Again, it's very selfish. If you're successful, then I get new toys to play with, and that makes me happy.
Well, I mean, a lot when we come up with the open lock, and I was talking to Devon from Open Forge and showing him the stuff, and we're working on it kind of together at the latest, the final stages. And people were like, "Well, why make it for free? Why open source it? Then everyone will have it." And I'm like, "Great." Because I principally approached it, I guess, from a gamer, where that's what I would want. I would want to be able to just be able to get different tiles from anywhere and know that they would all work together, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's great, so you have all the Rampage stuff, which is a completely modular system, but then you also make these beautiful standalone buildings that if you really want to go the extra mile and you just want a tavern, or you just want a French townhouse, or you just want the Old West Saloon, you could print all of those and then just have a nice building that looks perfect because it was designed from top to bottom as a single standalone unit. And I think those are great as well. It's a nice combination of options you have.
It's with the modular systems are always going to have some kind of limitation to a certain degree, because they need, in fact, just because the nature that they need to be modular. When you're building something from the ground up where you don't have any modular components, it's just a single building, you can make things that you could never make in from a modular perspective.
Yeah, and it's really, I think, again, having both options is wonderful. And again, from a price point, if you're a gamer, and if I want the plans for one of those, fantasy buildings, they range from about $10 to $20, depending on the size of the building that I'm building, right?
Well, they're like under $10 each in most cases. It's $7 for a collection of the one Rampage wall set. I mean, we got about 20 or 30 wall sets, so you'd probably spend a few $100s if you bought them all. But if you get them on the Kickstarter, you're paying, I think, like $100 and something dollars for the entire Rampage collection. That's all the old Rampage, all the new system. But you can buy a model for about the same price as a cup of Starbucks. You know what I mean? It's not like we're not going to ever be millionaires out of this, but we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, and you're going to make a lot of gamers, have great gaming experiences, which is, it's very altruistic what you do, right? You get to pay your rent, but then we get to play amazing games, right? And so it's a win-win,
Oh yeah, it's good. It's good for. I mean, we love doing what we do. I mean, me and Bruce there, we're like, yay, we get to play with Rampage all day, making some castles. It's like, can't believe this is our day job.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. As a gamer and as a user of your system, I have a request. Okay, so perhaps it would be awesome if in the future, when the Kickstarter winds down, you have some time to breathe again. So it's cool. I could build all these castles now, right? But I sort of get design freeze. Like, I don't know what I should print. I don't know what I should build. I can't design a castle. I don't know. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with all these awesome parts? So I think it would be fantastic if you could do sort of a series of PDFs. Maybe you sell them on your website for $2 or $3 each. I don't know. That just tells us how many parts to print of which part and how to clip them together, so that I can say, hey, I can build Castle A or Castle B or Castle C and so on and so forth. And whenever you have an idea for a cool new shape, slap together another PDF and charge me another $3, and I'm super happy because then I can know I need 27 A's and 2 B's, whatever, and I can just lock them all together like a Lego set, right? Except I print my own, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's right. And because there is so many combinations and so many things you can do with the Rampage system, it can look a little bit confusing when you first look at all of these pieces and you want to start printing. And I actually am going to do something like that with Rampage. I mean, how to get started, what to do first and what to print, you know, because one guy said he was printing one of everything, which isn't probably the right thing to do to start off with.
Yeah, that's true.
It's good to have, you know, one of everything, but you should, have more floors, for example, than anything else because you use more of those. And so, yeah, I could do some examples of different combinations. That's actually what we're kind of working on there. We're going to make a whole bunch of stuff to demonstrate that, because that's probably one of the most common questions is like, what can I make, you know?
Yeah. And so then I have one more question. While we're talking about Castle, because Castle is one of the focus of this new Kickstarter, you do have some other Castle stuff that you had from previous Kickstarters, from the Winterdale and the Winterdale 2 or whatever.
Yeah, I'll just grab one, if you like.
Sure.
This kind of thing.
So now those weren't modular, right? Those were sort of standalone or pseudo-modular or something?
Yeah, pseudo-modular, in that you could connect and stack different elements together. You know, you could stack different parts and make different, walls, but it was designed for a much bigger kind of setting.
Right. So now, are those in any way compatible with the Rampage Castle stuff?
Not really, no.
Okay, so it's just sort of like if you want to build one of these things over here. So if I'm buying Rampage Castle, I don't necessarily have to get Winterdale stuff to make it even bigger and better.
Well, we kind of use them interchangeably and at the same time in a game, or quite often.
Sure.
It depends what game you're playing. If you're doing Frostgrave, these are quite good because you can make a real good Frostgrave setting with this. The Winterdale walls. I'll just grab those. Citadel walls and stuff that kind of join on with all this stuff make these nice, big, bulky, kind of Frostgravey kind of style buildings. But if you're more into like D&D or something, or Pathfinder, and you're doing an RPG, then you want to use Rampage system because that's really designed with 1-inch square base throughout the whole thing. I mean, one of the advantages of this is it's all 1-inch, complete 1-inch inside, so you don't have that wall on floor cutting through.
Right. Yeah.
And you can make just a little kind of with D&D, everything you do is always a little bit different, and you want to assemble different things each time.
Sure. Whereas
with a war game, it doesn't matter. That's just the building. It's the building. It's not really crucial that it's themed exactly to what you want to do,
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Matt, so your Kickstarter will be running for, what, about 6 more days or something like that? 7 more days?
I think 6 days now, I think it is. Have a look at it. I think it's... Yes, 7 more days to go. Well, 6 will probably by the time this goes to...
Yeah, I'll get it up tomorrow morning. So, so around 6 days. And it's a cheap jumping on point, and it's a fantastic system, and the quality of the models is top notch. I really, to our audience, if you've been on the fence about 3D printing, if you run a D&D campaign or you play Warhammer or any tabletop game at all, my printer, which is not the best printer on the market, but it was only $200, and I got to tell you, it does an amazing job of these tiles, right? Because I don't need it to be like the highest quality resolution printer, but it still does an amazing job. All my friends are blown away every time I show them, and printing each tile is very inexpensive, and it's a breeze to do. You buy the files, you drop them on the printer, and you're good to go.
It is, and it's like a hobby within a hobby as well. There's once you start doing it, there's a kind of satisfaction putting a big print on at night and coming up in the morning. It's like Christmas sometimes, because you kind of wake up and you're like, oh, my print will be ready, and you off you go.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I got 6 walls and 2 doors and whatever else I can squeeze on that print bed. My printer is only a 4x4, so I have to like very carefully cram it full with all of the pieces I can possibly fit on there for one print job. But yeah, you're right. I go to bed and I get up and then I kick another one off. So when I go to work, and then when I get home from work and it's ready to go again, and I do a small job in the evening and then kick up the big one at night again, and it just keep repeating. It was a race to Christmas, to get all the things built and printed and painted before it was Christmas morning for the kids. But it was awesome. So, well, thank you so much. I don't want to take any more of your time. I know you're very busy, and I wish you the best of luck with this campaign. I hope that some of our listeners will jump on board, and I'm already looking forward to the next Kickstarter, whenever that may be.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. See you later.
Bye-bye.